What is up, everybody? For this video I want to explain my plan for the turbo setup on the Dakota. If we hit the 1,000 subscribers mark, which I believe that we will, this is going to be how the build is going to go down. This build is pretty much going to be identical to the original build that I did on the green truck, except I'm going to apply everything that I learned first time around and correct a lot of the mistakes that I made prior, but it's going to be on basically the same budget, using pretty much all eBay parts and recycling a lot of the stuff that's already on the truck and just repurposing things, modifying things to make them work. Let's just go over some of the things I'm going to do. First thing I'm going to do on this truck, it's going to be the first thing I sort out, is the fuel system. So I'm probably going to end up having to pull the bed off the truck, and I'm going to go into where the fuel pump assembly is, and I'm going to remove the stock fuel pump and all the stock lines from it, replace where the fuel pump currently sits inside of the housing with just a hose that runs down to where the pump feeds into, basically, and then run an external Walbro 255 pump externally somewhere. So I'm going to have basically just hose inside of the housing where the pump's supposed to be, and then more hose running up to the fuel pump, and then I'm going to run all proper hose clamps, high pressure hose and everything up to the fuel rail. So I'm going to go and take the fuel rails completely off, and I'm going to bubble flare the feed and the return line fittings, or where they're supposed to go, and then I'll be able to just use a hose clamp and hose clamp soft lines directly to the rails on both the feed and the return. And then I'll have soft line running all the way from basically inside of the tank all the way up front. And then of course on the rail there's a spot back in here. You can't really see it, but you can see a little bit. There's two soft hoses in there that aren't clamped or anything. They're just kind of pressed on. I'm going to take those off and actually hose clamp them on. There should be a bubble flare fit or something, or a barb or something underneath of there. If not, I'll put one on and then actually hose clamp two high pressure hoses there. And then on the return, of course, it'll also be flared so the hoses don't blow off. And then I'll probably also sand with like some really rough, like 60 grit sandpaper on all of the places that I flare myself, and maybe some others, to make sure that every hose connection can hold up to very high pressure, because it's going to go from the return line to an eBay FMU, and that's what I'm going to use to regulate fuel. I'm going to start with a 12:1 ratio FMU, and then if it runs too rich, which I'd much rather run a little bit rich than a little bit lean, I will just put a different disc in it and see how it goes. At first, I'm not going to run, probably not going to run wideband on it or anything, just to start with. I'll just run the 12:1 FMU, because it's the biggest FMU you can get anyways, a 12:1. And then from the FMU, it's just going to be one solid soft line all the way back into the tank. The reason I want to run an external pump is because I don't think the stock fuel pump housing can handle anything over factory fuel pressure, because the entire housing is 100% plastic. It is not metal. Having the inline pump feeding through that housing into the pump rather than a pump pushing through the housing will mean that even when the FMU is working and everything, there will be no pressure going through that housing. All the pressure will be between the pump itself and the FMU. There will be no other pressure anywhere else in the system. That way, when fuel pressure is going to get up to like 100 plus PSI when the thing hits full boost, which I'm going to probably limit it to 6 PSI while it's on an FMU, maybe bump it up to 8 after I drive it around and get some kinks worked out of it. But it's going to be low boost, 6 to 8 pounds of boost, so fuel pressure is going to get up to 110, 120 PSI when it's at full boost. I want to make sure that I don't blow any fuel lines out. That's the last thing I want to do. I'd much rather have a line blow out underneath the truck than in the engine bay, because it's less likely to catch fire, but I still don't want it to happen at all. I will have a fire extinguisher in the truck because I don't trust FMUs. So that's the fuel system. Stock injectors, stock ECU. One other thing I may have to run, I'm not sure, I'll probably run it regardless. There's these little, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a little thing you wire between the map sensor signal and your ECU, and it prevents the stock ECU from reading anything over atmospheric pressure. So basically, once you hit, the ECU can't read anything over, no vacuum, basically. So once the map sensor picks up anything over, atmospheric pressure. Once it starts reading boost, the little thing I wire into it will prevent that boost signal from being sent to the ECU, so the ECU will have no idea that it's in boost. It'll have no clue. It'll never know. And then the FMU will take over and do all the work from there once it's in boost. That's what I need to do. That way the ECU doesn't freak out. Some Chrysler vehicles will actually fuel cut when they hit boost, so I want to make sure that doesn't happen. I know the 420As do that, so I'll probably end up using one of those little things. I don't even remember what they call it. I will probably use one that's intended for a 420A. That's the plan for the fuel system eBay FMU setup with all good clamps and everything. Make sure, lines are not very likely to blow out. And the next thing is the exhaust. This is what I mentioned in the last video I released, the 1000 subs video, where I was talking about the Subaru Rumble. So in the engine bay, I have a turbo actually sitting in there. Right here is where the turbo is going to be mounted. I'm going to take the stock cast manifold, weld a turbo flange to it, and basically right there is about where it's going to sit. Of course, it's going to be up closer to the valve cover and not resting on this fender. But this is where the turbo is going to sit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the factory Y pipe, and then from here down to where they link up, I'm going to take the spot where it actually runs into the actual exhaust, and I'm just going to close that off, and then I'm going to run just a pipe from somewhere up a little bit higher over and just link the two halves of the header together so that this header will go into the Y pipe and run up into and be pushed into this header. That way it's not, exiting. Hopefully it's making a little bit of sense, but it's going to work basically like a Subaru Boxer exhaust, where the turbo will be mounted right here on this side of the exhaust, clear up front, and it'll just be a massive unequal length exhaust header, basically, or manifold running from here all the way over to this header. This way I don't have the Y pipe or anything. I'll be able to keep the entire front end of the truck clean and still have the turbo mounted here. It'll be a lot easier to get things mounted and lined up and installed, because all I have to do to make sure the Y pipe is correct is take like a metal bracket, weld it up to the Y pipe somewhere, and then just run a new pipe in, join those two, and then cut that pipe off, cut the little Y section off the bottom, close it all up, and then I'll just be able to run a down pipe down yonder this way somewhere. And I mean, that's the plan for exhaust basically. And then of course the down pipe will be exiting up here, so it'll have to run underneath the turbo and then out somewhere. It'll be a little bit tricky getting it through everything thanks to the transmission dipstick and a couple other things down there, but I'll make it happen. I will make it work however I have to. 2.5-inch exhaust should just clear through there, and then if it won't, I may have to get rid of the dipstick for the trans completely or something. But that's the plan for the exhaust. It's going to be a massive, it's probably going to have more rumble than your typical Subaru, because it's going to be a massive difference in header length between the two sides, but it's going to work great. I know it will. It's going to be awesome. It's going to sound awesome. And it's going to be a lot better than having the Y pipe and flipping the headers. The other advantage to doing it this way, since there will be no exhaust running up in the front of the vehicle, there will be less heat getting blown onto the engine, so less heat soak. The turbo will be away from my brakes and my steering stuff, so all that stuff will be good. The turbo's away from all the brake lines and everything. And I can keep my power steering pump, which I had to remove on the green truck to make the header fit when I flipped it. And I'll have room right here where the clutch fan is, because I'm going to run electric fans. I'm going to get rid of the clutch fan, put electric fans in, and I'm going to mount the intercooler inside of the engine bay, right here where this fan is, behind the radiator somewhere. And it'll be just a full-on sleeper look. Nobody will ever know unless they hear it that there's an intercooler in there, because they won't be able to look and see a giant intercooler hanging out down here. It's going to be tucked up behind the radiator where nobody will see it. Of course, it's not going to flow as well probably as it would if it was hanging out the front of the truck, but there will be less restriction because they won't have to make as many bends and stuff with the intercooler pipe, and it's only going to be making 6 to 8 pounds of boost. The air coming in isn't going to be that hot, and in eBay intercoolers are fairly large for the most part. Like the one I ran on the green truck was pretty good size. It'll be able to cool just fine. Plus, if the radiator fans are moving or whatever, they'll help blow air onto everything. So that's the plan for the fuel system and the exhaust, and also for the intercooler. piping and everything. So of course intercooler will be here, and then it'll just run to like one of those Spectre air hat things. I'm not going to use a plastic one because I destroyed 2 of those on the green truck. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to get an aluminum Spectre air hat for like a carburetor or something. So it's going to go turbo, pipe, and then intercooler, and then over and up into the intake. And hopefully I don't blow a bunch of vacuum lines out. There's only going to be, like I said, 6 to 8 pounds of boost, so they shouldn't blow out. And it's not like it's going to be at that boost all the time. So hopefully things don't blow up, blow out like that. Also, I'm going to run twin wastegates on it. I'm going to run one on either side. I'm going to run one mounted somewhere towards the back where this back end of the header is. I'm going to have another one all the way over on this side, probably right about here. I think you guys can see. I got the camera down there. It'll be down this way somewhere because I don't think just the regular 38 mil wastegate will be able to flow enough exhaust to stably regulate the boost, and 2 of them that far apart like that, well, basically one per side, will guarantee that I don't have issues with it. The wastegates on eBay and whatever, the 38 mils are made for, 4-cylinder, smaller engines. I am just afraid that this being about twice the literage that one of those is supposed to be able to regulate, it may be able to keep the boost from going too high, but it'll probably spike and then go back down. I just don't want that to happen. I don't want to overboost. I got an FMU and a stock engine. I do not want to go over, my 6 to 8 pounds of boost that I have set. So dual external wastegates, unequal length headers, intercooler hidden inside. This thing's going to be the nastiest sounding sleeper truck ever. It's going to be sick. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you guys are looking forward to it as well. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of the idea on the plan for this thing as far as boosting it. eBay turbo already here. Oh, the other thing I want to talk about is the oil lines. So before I went from the fitting that's on the back of the truck here somewhere. I can't really see it. It's back in there somewhere. But it's really hard to reach, and you can't fit a T-fitting on there to it, so I can't like run an oil pressure gauge or anything. So what I'm going to do is get a sandwich plate for the oil filter so I can just tee off of that and use that for the feed. And then for the drain, I'll end up pulling the oil pan out and then using one of those threaded fittings basically that you can get on eBay for like 10 bucks, and then just drill a hole in the oil pan, put the fitting in, Loctite it so it doesn't come loose, and then I'll have the drain set up. It'll be over here on the side somewhere, probably down right past that motor mount is where it'll run. It'll be a pretty nice straight shot as long as I can keep it from bumping into exhaust and stuff. That is the plan for the turbo build on this truck. I hope you guys are looking forward to it. Like I said in the last video, if you want to see this happen, if you want to be a part of it, make this happen, please subscribe, tell your other friends, family, whoever may be interested to subscribe. And that's where I'm going to leave it for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys later. The snow yesterday was pretty much a false alarm. Thank you, Ohio. You can see some of it in the cracks, but it pretty much flurried for about 5 minutes while I was out here and then stopped. Cool.